Empty the chamber on them. And how do you do that? We're 6 seconds, point A to point B, everything you got. Everything you got. Turn that shit up. Let's go.
Welcome to Scoop Order, Monday night edition. Craziness going on in the transfer portal world for the Buckeyes. A lot of smoke, a lot of buzz around a superstar cornerback potentially coming to Ohio State. We're going to dig into that. We have film on a couple of the top linebackers in the country coming up. We're going to break some of that down. And winter workouts are well underway in the Woody Hayes. So guys are starting to make their moves. I'm telling you, this is an important time of year. People don't see it. The fans don't see it. The media doesn't see it. But this is a time where guys can really secure their spots. So with that being said, as always, we're very thankful and grateful for you guys. We are, sir, about 200 subs away from a milestone of 18,000 subs on our channel. We thank you guys so much. Appreciate you guys subbing, liking the content, bringing the questions, bringing the energy to these shows. These shows are absolutely fantastic, and a lot of it is because of you guys. You guys bring some fantastic insight, fantastic questions, really make the show fun to do. We love interacting with you guys, so thank you guys for being a part of it. If you are listening to this, the recorded, uploaded version on YouTube or on any of the podcast formats that we support, Apple, Spotify, consider, about 7 o'clock every night, we are going live, bringing great information, having a blast. So we'd love for you guys to join us for our live shows. If you guys have questions, you can always dive in and talk to Nevada and I. And also, we're on BuckeyeScoop.com all day. That is where all of the information breaks. First, always, and forever. And we are on there 24 hours a day. So it was a very lively day yesterday with the championship games in the NFL. The Ohio State basketball game threads have been very spicy lately with what's been going on. So there's always a great community and a lot of fun to be had on BuckeyeScoop.com. So if you are one of the best Ohio State supporters on the planet, you need to be on BuckeyeScoop.com because that's where we all hang out. So we appreciate you guys as always. That being said, I'm going to bring in my man. It's Panda Watch day 4, I feel like. How are we feeling? How are we doing with our boy Davison, Igbinosun, Panda Watch day 5?
Well, I'd say people are cautiously optimistic around Ohio State circles right now, but I would caution anybody from premature celebration and spiking the football. And I'm seeing a lot of that going on the internet. And again, in our effort to explain to you guys how all this stuff works, this is how it works. Is generally somebody will put out information, and if they have some sort of credibility, then everybody else will just pile on and kind of tail them. So it'll look like, wow, this is being confirmed by 19 different sources, but really it's only one person and 18 people just trying to be in a squirrel, trying to find a nut and trying to jump on this thing. So right now, from the horse's mouth, from Ohio State's position on this is we are cautiously optimistic, but it ain't done yet. So we're hoping it gets done. We're cautiously optimistic. I am certainly more encouraged at this time than I was last night at this time. But in the age of NIL, you got to remember it's like a silent auction going on, and you can be winning. Or if anybody's ever bid on eBay, imagine you're on eBay and you're the winner on the bid. With 25 minutes to go, then 20 minutes to go, then 5 minutes to go, 30 seconds ago, and you're like, man, I won this thing, I won, and then all of a sudden, bang, you lose. That's kind of how it kind of goes in the age of NIL. So we're cautiously optimistic. We think Ohio State's well positioned. We think things have been received. The NIL people, the collectives from Ohio State did their jobs. They've come through. So everything seems to be in place, but it's not done. But certainly looking encouraging. And if we got it, this would be a big one. So it's definitely be something to be excited about because this is a 2-year player. This is not a 1-season rental. Mr. Barton made the point yesterday that this would be a kid you get for 2 seasons, which is in the portal transfer era, not unheard of, but certainly more unusual than not. So this would be big, and could have some exciting news here very, very shortly. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the eBay analogy is fantastic. Look, folks, it happened with us with Mark Fletcher. Mark Fletcher was in the bag. His buddies are all coming up here. He plays at Heritage with Ennis, and like BFFs. And then, you get down to closing time, that final little stretch of the eBay thing when you've been leading the bidding the whole way, and all of a sudden Florida shows up, Miami shows up with the bag, and Tony Alford was the guy that thought he had him in the bag and thought that it was going to be new kid in the room, and guess what? The bag showed up, and all of a sudden decommits, goes to the Miami Hurricanes. So again, we're not trying to be doomsdayers or negative, because again, I don't know. I had a discussion with Nevada today, like how many of these portal guys that get, a sizable amount of money pan out or don't pan out. Do they get fat and happy after they get a check? Do they not, end up working out? Do they cause, chaos in the locker room? Is it a catastrophe? So that's part of the brave new world of college football right now. So, the kid that went on this, the crystal balled it, is a kid, 247 kid, whatever, but it's not Whit Fong, wasn't Krellick. Most of the guys that have been around the beat for a long time are a lot more cautious because, the local guys in recruiting have to live here and deal with, the faithful. And I've been as wrong as anybody. I've had what I thought was rock solid information, and I've had someone literally tell me, oh yeah, we're getting ready to move to Columbus and we're moving the kid in to Columbus this weekend. And so, of course, this Henry Toto, like I was literally from a fantastic source. And then he goes, Alabama. And what changed? Well, I got a text from somebody inside the Woody Hayes that said, can't compete with cash money. Literally, that was the quote. That was the text I got. And I was like, well, lesson learned, So it's like, even if someone says, hey, we're renting a U-Haul to move to Columbus, which again, that's like that'll be like a famous message board folklore funny thing, but that really happened. So, again, like can people say things and things change or whatever? Sure. But could this kid come to Ohio State and be a dominant cornerback for us? Absolutely. Like, I think that if you're that kid, you've been to the shoe, you see the talent, you're going to get to go against Marvin and Emeka every day. So nothing's going to make you more ready for the NFL than going against those guys. And then on Saturday, the best part of that is you don't have to go against them on Saturday. And you get to go against whoever you go against on Saturday. Is it going to be to the magnitude of Marvin and Emeka? So you're going to be feeling like you're on cakewalk streak. Like, that's how I always felt at Ohio State. And it's a stupid cliche when they say, oh, well, practices are so hard that the games are easy. But I'm like, when you go against like Will Smith and Mike Kudla and Vernon Golston and Cam Hayward, first round pick. And then Kudz was one of the best college players ever at Ohio State. Just wasn't an NFL type body, but he was a really, really good pass rusher. And he was a guy that gave all of us fits. And he was just a tough kid, strong as an ox. And, but when I got to Saturdays, it was a cakewalk because I wasn't going against Cam Hayward and Vernon and Will Smith and guys like that. So it makes your life easier when you go against really tough guys in practice. And plus, if you want to win and you want to win the championship and you want to feel good on Saturday nights, because, the biggest thing with me when I was in recruiting, the biggest reason I wanted to go to Ohio State is because I knew we'd be favored in every game coming off the national championship year. And I didn't want to I had a Stanford offer, but Stanford was terrible. And I didn't want to go 1-9 and be a 75-point underdog to USC and get throttled out there. It just wasn't appetizing to me. Like, I wanted to win and I wanted to feel good. And it's like, I wanted to win a national championship. And that's kind of why, Ohio State's appealing to all these kids because, they've been so proficient at winning, highest winning percentage in the entire country over the last 20 years, kind of a recession-proof program, knock on wood, but it just kind of is what it is. Nevada, do you think that there's a timeline? Do you think that do you sense a reticence amongst the kind of the more veteran recruiting guys locally in Columbus to go all in on this kid? Just because, in the age of NIL, it's really hard to go all in on a kid because you could be told that he's coming, his dad could tell you he's coming, and then the bag shows up and all of a sudden it's like your eBay thing where you lose and you're just like, well, what was the point of that? But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think the timing is any time. So I think, from a listener standpoint, I think people have to stay tuned because this one's going to all come together very, very quickly. But yeah, no, you definitely see kind of the elder statesmen being a little bit more cautious about this. But it's like I said, these are always interesting. The Toto one was definitely, I've learned lots of lessons in recruiting. That was definitely another lesson learned.
Oh my God.
It's like, that was so bad. I'm like, when I heard that he was going to Alabama, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. There's no way. But yeah, that stuff happens. But you just keep on swinging. You just keep on getting the information out there. And look, this one, I didn't want to let myself get excited about this kid, even when we first heard about him. I certainly wasn't as excited coming out of the Ohio State visit because it just seems like the focus seemed to be squarely on the NIL portion of the equation. But right now, I'm allowing myself to get excited again, and I'm like Michael Scott in the office. I'm ready to be heard again. But maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. But definitely going to be an exciting 24, 48 hours. That's for sure.
Yeah, and the toe thing was amazing because like I never believed it. I talked to the dad at length for really, really long periods of time. And then, when Berm went on it and said he was coming to Ohio State and Corella crystal balled him to Ohio State, I was like, wow, this actually might happen. So I was like, all right, well, it seems like it's happening. I got all this intel from the dad. They're moving. And then boom, Bama, roll tide. Hayes Fawcett edit comes out. I was like, oh my God. I mean, I've been had. But again, that's why recruiting is kind of crazy. It's kind of fun because like even if you think you have it, there's always some craziness that could come around the pike, and all of a sudden he ends up at Bama. So again, yeah, that's just lesson learned. And again, is it worth getting all worked up over a kid that, did Henry ever win a national title? No, they lost to Georgia the last 2 years. So it's not, his whole goal was to win the Buckeyes, win the national title. He didn't do either. So, God bless him. I hope he has a great career. Nice kid. No negativity here, but it's just one of those interesting things. Nevada, James Laurinaitis in the building, starting work. Your thoughts on how are you feeling that it actually happened a year after they wouldn't return the phone calls, they wouldn't kind of entertain it? It's kind of almost silly looking back at it that he had to go to Notre Dame for 1 year and now he's back home where he should have been the whole time. But what are your thoughts on it now that James is officially a member of Ohio State football once again, and he's back to work in Woody Hayes?
Well, like you said, it's a little surreal. I mean, the whole situation is a little bit surreal, but that's kind of what happens sometimes, and sometimes it just works out for the best. But it came around, and the good guys got this one, so I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. What's up, Stu? What's up, Scott? Appreciate you guys being on here. I love being on here. This is a blast. So you guys always bring some really good stuff. Are you guys in terms of winter conditioning? This is a question that I actually got today earlier offline. People ask, what goes on in the Woody Hayes in February? Because obviously January you finish up your bowl game. You go right onto the road recruiting. These coaches have been on the road literally since they got done with the Georgia game. So they've been away from their families, hitting high schools 5 days a week. It is a sprint to the finish. A lot of it is, or pretty much for Ohio State at this point with the early signing day happening in December, it's literally all to get in front of the 24s and the 25s and even some 26s that are out there that you got to go see, kind of eyeball, see if you can get a look at them, see if you can bump into them, kind of verify their size, height, and weight, that type of thing. And then now that we're basically in February in a couple days, it is nothing but hardcore staff meetings, 8-10 hours a day. Again, when we did these with Urban, February was the worst month of the entire year because we were in there from 6 to about 6 every day, and it was torturous. And again, I'm not crying. It was fine because we had to install a new offense. We had to change the culture. Like, it was a far cry from where the program is now because Urban came in, taking over a 6 and 7 outfit that was kind of despondent and lazy and fat. And I mean, he came in with the chainsaw and took out took everybody down basically. And I was fine with it because again, like when you're 6 and 7, I don't care what he does to you because we were so bad and we lost so many games. We lost to Michigan, so something had to change. But that February, I'll never forget how brutal it was with Urban. We had staff meetings, we had mat drills, 6 a.m. conditioning. It was a grind. It was crazy. It's a slow month for sites, but for us, I mean, I'm sure we're gonna have plenty of energy and plenty of information to talk about. Nevada, in your past, February used to be like a mega part of the calendar because you had the signing day, which back in the day, National Signing Day used to be like a national holiday for recruitniks out there. But how has February changed since they've added the early signing day in December to where it is now?
Yeah, well, it's definitely weird. I mean, I think back about, the college football calendar for me, the two biggest days of the year used to be New Year's Day and National Signing Day. And now both of those are kind of not what they used to be. So it's definitely, times are changing. You got to change with them as it kind of goes. But yeah, it's odd not having a national. I can remember, vividly, National Signing Day parties and all day chats and hanging out with Bill Greene down in Florida, watching the recruits come in over the phone. And I mean, just so many good times with it. But like you said, things are different now. It just seems like the whole calendar gets kind of compressed. And it seems like yesterday we were just having that final kick against Georgia, and pretty soon we're going to be teeing it up for spring ball and what's going to be a really, really, really special 2023 season. So no, I'm excited, and I'm excited about this next 24, 48 hours. This news on this potential transfer portal could be I mean, I'm not saying it's a season changer for Ohio State, but to me it would be answer a huge question mark about who's that corner number two. Obviously we still need to find corner number three, but if you're lining up Denzel Burke and a freshman All-American from Ole Miss as your first two corners, your defense is looking a lot better than it was just a couple of days before. So some exciting news potentially on the horizon, so stay tuned.
Yeah, corner. You can't have enough corners in college football nowadays. I mean, it's such a position of need, especially a guy who's 6'3". He's a lanky guy, tall guy, aggressive, fast. Really played well against good teams. You look at his grades. I'm actually tracking down some of his film. If we do end up getting him, we will break down some of his Ole Miss film, some of his better games. So you guys can look forward to that. Scott, I love this. The Senior Bowl. So I played in the Senior Bowl, feels like 1,000 years ago, 2008. Dewan is down there. Dewan made a big spectacle out of his wingspan because he's basically the size of a 747, largest wingspan in the history of the Senior Bowl, which is fascinating and also fantastic for pass protection. I think Juan can make a lot of money this week. Today, they were just in shoulder pads, no pants. Tomorrow they will be in full pads. I believe that in the afternoon, the NFL Network has a recap show. Might be around 4 or 5. You want to check your TV guide on your DirecTV or whatever service you guys have for that. They used to do the practices live back in the day, so those used to always be something that was really fun to watch. But now I believe they just have a recap show. But you guys should check NFL Network around noonish tomorrow to see if they're out on the field practicing. They changed the coaching staff. So the coaching staffs used to be two NFL teams that had missed the playoffs that hadn't done it the year prior. When I played, it was interesting because we had the Raiders staff led by Lane Kiffin. So Lane Kiffin was a very young coach. I think it might have been his second year as the head coach of the Raiders. And it was a complete circus because he never wore any Oakland Raiders gear, which was weird because every coach down there, they all wear their regalia. Like if they're a Lions scout or a Lions GM, they're all in Lions gear or Rams gear, Browns gear, whatever. And Lane was in the middle of a thing, and Al Davis came on and said that he was working to fire Lane Kiffin, like in the middle of the Senior Bowl, in the middle of the week. So it was like very interesting. Rob Ryan was on staff, the Rex Ryan's brother, big fat guy, talking trash. Tom Cable is the offensive line coach. So it was quite the cast of characters. It was very interesting. But it was a good experience. I got hurt on the third day, tore my knee, which really sucked because I couldn't work out at the combine, and I failed my physical at the combine. So that is not great for your NFL stock when you fail your physical, just so you guys know. But otherwise, it's a nice week down in Mobile, and people look forward to going down there, and they do a lot of charitable stuff. So it's a great week. But I've told guys, look, if you've played a lot, don't go play in that game. You're good. You've got 50 games of film. But DeJuan's playing in it, and good for him. I hope he does fantastic. I hope he plays left and right tackle and does a great job. I'm not sure who else is playing. I'd imagine maybe Zach Harrison or Tron Vincent. I think Tron might be in the East-West Shrine game, which is actually going to be played on Thursday night. They've been practicing for a few days, but it's a really good experience for these guys to do. So, uh, Nevada, your thought, yeah. So this is interesting. So Pedro, what's interesting is so he is enrolled in at Tennessee. And of course we're talking about our boy Davison, Igbinosun. He is enrolled at Tennessee, but it's just kind of a clerical thing where he's enrolled, and if he shows up, great, he's ready to take class, and if not, they'll drop him and delete him from the roster. So that's just kind of a technical thing. I'm sure Ohio State could do something similar to get him into classes because that's the interesting part about the transfer portal now is that these kids we're 3-4 weeks into class already, and this kid hasn't taken a class at Ohio State, but somehow they'll be able to backload him in or kind of widget him into the program and keep him eligible, which is kind of fascinating to see these guys that kind of take their sweet time in the portal. Because if I was in the portal, if I was one of these guys and I was trying to change, I'd want to already be at my new school, working out, getting ready for 6 a.m.s and in class and moved and all that. Because he's still got to move and get into his new apartment and do all that stuff. He'll be doing that right, as he nudges right up to spring ball. Nevada, your thoughts on him being enrolled at Tennessee? Doesn't matter. I don't think it's a factor, but your thoughts on that?
Well, we talked about this last night. I'm not sure about when you list somebody in the directory. Let's be clear what we're talking about. Where he's listed in the directory. Now, I'm not. I've seen in that situation before where somebody that's just proficient on the computer or anybody could enter him on the directory, and so that may or may not be meaningful. I try not to read too much into that type of stuff, but it certainly isn't determinative. It's certainly nothing that he couldn't get out of. But I'm not sure if it was really a thing or if it was just kind of a thing that somebody did on the internet type of thing. But either way, it doesn't matter. I do think it is a Tennessee Ohio State battle, and Ohio State giving them the bag, but Tennessee's got a bigger bag, and man, they were giving away money. Tennessee was giving away money when they were rolling. They were giving away money in McDonald's bags or Chick-fil-A bags and stuff like that. Now they don't have to do that. Now they can give you the NIL bag. So I never count Tennessee out until they're completely out. So let's see how this one breaks.
Yeah, I agree. So we have a super chat. As always, thank you, D Sunny. These things are always great for us. We appreciate you guys doing this. This is a way to guarantee you get your question answered. So thank you for the show. Appreciate that, Sonny. What do you think the ceiling is for Emeka outside of Marv and the new freshman? Could any wideouts be future stars? Nevada, do you want to go first?
Well, yeah. What I think the ceiling is for Emeka. I think Emeka's right. Maybe he's not Chris Olave, but maybe he's just like a shade below Chris Olave. Emeka's pretty special player for sure. As for the freshmen, I expect, Ballard and Burton both to take big steps forward. But I think I'll have a much better handle on it coming out of spring ball. I really thought Ballard had made a move during the bowl prep, and I thought he was going to be a guy that would actually have a featured role against Georgia, and it didn't happen. So from a personnel standpoint, on the wide receivers, it's going to be tough because you've got Ennis and you've got Tate and you've got the Rogers boys, and you've got a lot of guys going in, and then you've got that whole class that came in that was very, very highly regarded last year. So, look, Brandon Ennis is my pick for a guy that I don't know how he doesn't play the day he sets foot on campus. But when you've got Emeka, Marvin, Julian, and Xavier ahead, it's gonna be hard to put him on the field. But it's gonna be fun to watch, and I can't wait to see it. And I think spring ball is gonna be a lot of fun to watch just for that very reason.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that Emeka, if I had to say who he reminds me of and who I think he could be utilized like, he probably won't be utilized like that, but he reminds me of Deebo Samuel from the 49ers. He's a guy that can do everything. He's physical. He's a guy that, if I go break down the final 3 offensive plays of the Georgia Sugar Bowl game, if the last run that we do, if we hand it to him on a jet sweep, he probably gets 15 yards, or he probably switched the field goal nice and easy. But instead we ran a zone play into a cross dog, which again was, I mean, Ryan was trying to catch him in something, and Georgia caught us. So, but Emeka's a guy that I would design 10 to 15 touches a game. I'd probably do 7 or 8 targets in the throw game, and I'd give him about 7 carries a game. And I'm not talking like, I formation, running the A gap. I'm talking about get out on the edge, jet sweeps, the push sweeps, the Tavon Austin kind of stuff, because he's a rare guy that has the ability to take the ball and put his foot in the ground and get upfield. And he's not scared. He's tough. He's sturdy. Fantastic agility. He's a guy, that's a rare skill. Like, I don't think Marvin has the same skill set as Emeka in terms of doing things like a jet sweep. Honestly, he's kind of like a much better version of Paris Campbell, which is why I said Debo Samuel, who's like an all-pro version of Paris Campbell. But I also think he's a better route runner. So he's got, he's going to be top 15 to 20, I'd imagine, in the draft, provided our quarterback plays adequate. Even if it's not, who cares? I'd take him not quite as high as Marvin. I think they're different animals, different skill sets. Marvin reminds me of like Devontae Adams. He's a guy that can get open on anybody. He's a guy that's just a big, tall monster. He's a guy that honestly, one of the things that I think Ryan Day could do a lot better at is getting him involved in the red zone, because there's times where he's not involved. Like, I mean, he's a guy that I think he's got to be a target hog in the red zone, because guys can't match up with him. Even if he's getting doubled, I'd still try to force a couple to him just because I think he could come down with it. In terms of the freshman, it was interesting because we got really good reports on Jaden Ballard, and people that were watching practice were telling us some of the things he was doing, some of the the motion stuff, get on the edge, taking it deep. It's weird. Jaden Ballard is such an enigma because I got more glowing reports about him than probably, I don't want to say any player on the roster, but God, for guys that like didn't play, I mean, people kept saying Jaden Ballard, Jaden Ballard. Like, there's a practice, right at the end of camp, spring. I mean, these guys, like, Jaden Ballard's taking over deep balls, throwing it to him, running past their corners. And again, I don't know if it's because our second team corners were trash. Maybe that's what it was, but he was getting behind guys and making them pay. And I was like, well, that's something that like we don't really have a guy that can do. And plus, I didn't feel like we were really that deep at receiver. We literally played 4 guys, and one of them was a former walk-on who's a scholarship guy now, Xavier Johnson, who I think's one of the most underrated players on the team. But I think that I think Coach has got a shot. He looks like he's starting to fill out. And again, we'll know after spring ball. It's like, Nevada said the best when you've got the 2 Rogers brothers showing up. You got Bryson Noe, you got Ennis isn't here, but when he gets here, he's coming to take somebody's spot. Tate's here, who's better than any of the guys we took last year. So those young guys show up, man. There's a lot of fire underneath the burner there to get to claim a spot in the rotation, because the death knell for your career at Ohio State, most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time, is if a guy who's a class below you or younger than you passes you up, and that happens sometimes. And that's when, when that happens, guys they're portal bound. When guys, I saw that when I played there, when I coached there, when a younger guy if a sophomore jumps in front of a junior or senior, I've seen the junior and senior shut it down, and now they probably just take the portal out. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see. Nevada, this is a great question, or a great statement here talking about, but I appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much, Sonny. I think, and I do think that, if you put a gun in my head with the young guys, I think Kojo could be a future star. But really, I think it's Tate. It's going to be Tate and Ennis. I think those are the guys that, especially Ennis. I think Ennis is just a different animal. And I think that he's got the brightest future. I think this is a great point, Steven. Steven says, Nevada, are people underestimating what 2 years of development in day system can have for McCord? And I think that's a great point. The fact that he's been here for 2 years, he knows the playbook, a lot of continuity in that offensive room. You have basically the same guys have been sitting in there that are a part of the throw game for the last 2-3 years, ever since McCord's been there. But your thoughts on that, Nevada?
Well, like I said, I'll just give you my absolute truth, unvarnished opinions on this stuff. I thought the first year when I saw Kyle play, I wasn't that impressed with him. I just really wasn't. I didn't really see it. I didn't really get it. I didn't really understand it. And I thought last year he looked like a different kid to me and looked much better. And so what I'll say is if he makes a similar type of jump from year one to year two and year two to year three, I think he can be a really good college quarterback. And I hope he's a really good college quarterback because, nothing for QBs, they've all got the physical skills. The question is, do they have the mental dexterity and the knowledge of the offense and the knowledge of the defenses to see and process what what the other teams are presenting to them and knowing how to counter it and knowing how to take advantage of it. And so I think him having 2 years working with Ryan Day to day, I thought he made huge strides last year. And if he makes a similar type of strides this year, I think he's going to be great. And I don't see any way Devin will take the job from him if he doesn't. Now, if he doesn't, I think it's a dogfight, and I think Devin could definitely take it because he's more mobile. He's a competitive kid, highly regarded kid, and it's going to be a great matchup. But no, if McCord having 2 years is a huge edge, and I think that's why I make him the favorite to take the first snap come September.
Yeah, like every step. He started a game against Akron 2 years ago when CJ got pulled these last couple years, and it's because we're up by 70 points or whatever. He's the guy that comes in off the bench, so you can't take that away from him. And when you're reading Ryan Day, obviously that's the guy that he thinks is the backup. Now, some of it might be semantics because he is the older quarterback. You start putting in the younger guy first, and then all of a sudden with the portal, it literally is like diffusing a bomb dealing with these kids. So, but I think it's really interesting that you bring up the years in Day system because I think the longer you're in an offense, the more comfortable you are, the more natural it is. It's less of a hey, I got to remember what my read is, and I got to remember what I got to do versus cover 2 versus cover 4 versus fire zone. It's like, because when you've been in it, you just know, like you see the look and you're right where it's going to. So, and again, like you look at our national championship years in my lifetime, Craig Krenzel, very solid quarterback, but not a CJ Stroud, Justin Fields, supernova type, Terrell Pryor, Troy Smith type, but won a national title. And Cardale, so our last 2 national titles, it's like when people say, oh, the line's going to stink and the quarterback might not be Fields or Stroud. I'm like, well, the last 2 titles we won were because of the infrastructure. It was because we had, Ezekiel Elliott, which could be our Trey Henderson. And we had Michael Thomas, who could be our Marvin Harrison Jr. And we had a tough O-line and a very, very good defense in 02 and 14. Obviously, 2 of the best defenses in the history of college football. So, if our defense takes a step, which we believe it will, starting with getting this wonderful cornerback, which would be great, and then Kyle McCord, again, he's throwing it to the best set of skill players I've ever seen at Ohio State in terms of top end talent, overall depth in the middle. I've never seen anything like this. Just because we have guys that play that are really young, and a point just from earlier when we were talking about like some of the young receivers, the freshmen, Ennis, Tate, those guys. Say those guys don't play a lot this year because they're, stuck behind the depth chart. I don't think that means that they're a disappointment, but you got to remember, 2 years ago, Marvin Harrison barely played as a freshman until that Rose Bowl where he had 3 touchdowns and had his coming out party. And in Emeka, like those guys were just kind of hanging in there, until Wilson and Olave opted out of the Rose Bowl. So, these guys, they need their opportunity to shine because up until that Utah game, we really didn't know what we had with Marvin and Emeka. And then when it was their time to shine, they lit it up. And obviously Jackson Smith and Jigba had the greatest bowl game in Ohio State history. It's a great question. Nick, appreciate this. Biggest position battles, Nevada, going into spring. 1 interior O-line spot, a safety spot, a second corner if we don't get the Ole Miss transfer. What do you think? Nevada, I'll let you start with this one. This is a fantastic question. Thank you, Nick.
Well, I mean, the obvious one, you talk about position battles. I mean, the biggest one is the quarterback. We just talked about that for 15 minutes, but I mean, that's the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth most important position battle on the field. I think the cornerback position, if we get this kid from the Ole Miss, then our cornerback position is pretty well settled. You'll have a spirited competition on the offensive line. And safeties, you've got a bunch of players at safety that are going to be kind of vying for time. You got lots of options. But interestingly, you don't have any questions at linebacker. You don't have any questions at tight end. You don't really, you don't really have any questions at defensive end. So you've got a lot of the key positions kind of covered. But yeah, no, it's going to be fun. But that quarterback battle is just going to be, I mean, it's going to be amazing to see because they're two just such completely different kids from a skill set standpoint, and we're going to see which one wins out. Kind of the more classic drop back type of quarterback, or the a little bit more mobile, scrambly, guy that can run around. Certainly not a he's not a JT Barrett. This guy's a pass first guy, but he certainly can run. So we're gonna have both styles on display throughout the spring. With the spring probably going to be non-contact black jersey for the quarterback. It's going to be a little hard to evaluate, but I think that's going to be the key point of differentiation. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah, that's something I kind of hate, is that we're so allergic to contact now, especially in the spring game, that like guys don't get hit anymore. There's no tackling to the ground anymore, and it's not just quarterbacks. But back in the day, I always thought it was kind of good of Tress to make the young quarterbacks live, just because it does put an extra layer of stress on the offensive line, knowing that if you do screw up, your quarterback's going to get killed. He's going to die. So it's like that. And again, I don't want a quarterback to get hurt or hit, but I think that some of that anxiety that the O-line gets is good, because once the game starts, like that's a real thing, and you got to see if any of these guys are going to freeze up and shrink when it comes that time. But I do think it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Victor Cutler. I think that because Justin mentioned playing him at center, but Matt's going to be the center. So do they run Victor at one of the guard spots? Is he big and strong enough to play guard in the Big Ten? I think if you have your druthers and your Justin Fry, you want Zen Mikulski to be your left tackle. You want Josh Fryer to be the right tackle. Donnie at left guard, right guard Enoch, and then center Matt Jones. And then, just let Cutler figure out where he is, because, he's not going to start off with the first team just transferring in from Louisiana Monroe, but I'm sure he'll rotate in at center guard. I think that he could have a lot of utility as the backup swing tackle, because that's the thing, is like you don't know who the backup tackle is. If Fryer or Zen get hurt, what do you do? Do you put Donnie out at left tackle? Do you bring in Vic Cutler at left tackle? Who's your best option? That's part of what spring ball is figuring out these dominoes. So it's a really fun part of it. It's not always a blast to make the rotations out. I'm sure that Luke Montgomery will get looks at tackle just for his pass protection, to see if he can hang in there and give some pass protection. And then you've got Padilla and Searveld also on campus, which is huge. So it'll be really interesting. Oh, this is another great one. Oh, we got another super chat. Appreciate you, D-Son. I'm gonna put this on here real quick. If General Chattel, like Bosa, excuse me, wanted to come to O State, but or package deal with a friend that's more of a MAC level, would O State offer both? Nevada, I'll let you take that one, because I know what I would do, but what would you do, Nevada?
Yeah, I'd offer them. I mean, I've never seen it actually happen, but it's a great concept. But if we're dealing with hypotheticals, yeah. I mean, have you ever had a chance to get a Bosa? I'd get his girlfriend into law school. I'd get his little sister on the lacrosse team. I'd get his mom to be the head of the booster club, and I'd drive his dad to every game to get another Bosa at Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, I would do the same thing, because I think that if you look at our roster, not all of our guys are Big Ten caliber guys now. So if you get a MAC guy and it really kind of depends on his position. Is he a quarterback and he soaks up one of the 4 or 5 scholarships you have there, or is he like a receiver? But if you can get a top 2 pick, especially as a premium guy like a pass rusher, I just say screw it and take it. And if the kid doesn't like riding the pine, then he can hit the portal. If not, he can cover kickoffs. But I would do almost anything to get another Nick Bosa on campus. You see how dominant he is. He's going to be the NFL Defensive Player of the Year as a relatively young player. He's going to get a huge second contract. Joey already has his $145 million deal. So, if I got to take his best friend and put him on scholarship, I just do it. And and just ride with it. But that is a great question. Again, this is why I love doing these with you guys, because you guys come up with some really good stuff, and that's one I never thought of. But I love kind of the, I mean, like you say, you could get a franchise quarterback, so you get Drake May to come, but you have to take his walk on buddy and put him on scholarship for a year or two. Like, I'd do it just because then you have the number one quarterback in the country thrown to Marvin and Emeka, and I think that's why Ryan Day went after Drake May. This is a question that I get.
Hold on, Kirk. I just wanted, before you go to this question, I just gotta say, I love Nick Saban doing the moral outrage thing about the other day about going,
Man.
and we had this one player who wanted to have his girlfriend get admitted to law school, and I'm like Nick hasn't been doing this stuff for years. Like, give me a break, Nick. Like, spare me the faux outrage about these requests from kids on NIL and other stuff that are in Alabama. Just anyway, I just had to say that because I thought that was hysterical.
I think it's a great way to play to the crowd. I mean, he's the absolute master of it when he says, well, they came to me and they tried to shake me down, and I picked up my cane and I shook it back at him, and I said, I'm not going to pay you $800,000, and I'm not going to do it. And I'm like, if that's Jadeveon Clowney, he'd probably pay him $1 million. So obviously the kid probably wasn't good enough to fit what Bama wanted, or, he probably just didn't fit the culture. So, but yeah, I did love that. I thought that was a great way to get the natives all excited about, oh, well, our program, we're not paying these kids. And I'm like, give me a break. I mean, come on. We know what you guys do. But Nick, this is a great question. What would I think of JT Barrett coming back to Ohio State's coach? Well, JT, I mean, I assume a lot of you know, but if you don't know, is like an assistant quarterbacks coach for the Detroit Lions right now. And that's a team that is one of the resurgent franchises in the NFL. Charismatic coach, Dan Campbell, super meathead, drinks like 18 shots of espresso, gets like 2 of them. So he does like 20 shots of espresso every morning on the way to the office, which I love because he is who he is. He is a big, tough meathead. His team is fun to watch. They play great. They're tough. I love the Detroit Lions because I was fortunate enough to be there, and they have Taylor Decker, and they have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I think is nuts, and his dad and mom are crazy, but I love watching that kid play. Honestly, that is a great comp for Emeka as Amon-Ra St. Brown, because Amon-Ra does the jet sweeps, reverses, gets open and slot, tough as nails. Like, that's a great comp for Emeka, and Amon-Ra is going to get paid when he gets his next deal. But Nevada, I think that, JT Barrett is probably the most underrated player in Ohio State history, in my opinion. The most perplexing thing is how people hate JT Barrett, who's one of the greatest kids, one of the nicest kids, one of the toughest kids, one of, 2 military Army parents that raised that kid the right way. We need more JT Barretts in the world. We need more parents like the Barrett family in the world. But what would your thoughts be on JT Barrett coming back to coach at Ohio State?
It'd be great. I mean, JT is just, I've never seen a kid that's more misunderstood. The sad thing about this, and I post this on the board, is JT knows how much of the Ohio State fan base hates him, and it's totally confusing to him, and because he doesn't understand why. And that makes me sad. It makes me sad because that kid gave it all. He was tough as nails. You watch him on some of those locker room videos, and you see how, you listen to a guy like Joe Burrow talk about who taught him how to play quarterback, and he's like, watching JT Barrett taught me how to play quarterback. And, I would love to have JT. There's another guy that I'd like to have. It would be Kenny Guyton. So bring back James Laurinaitis, bring back JT Barrett, bring back Kenny Guyton, and I'm telling you what, I think the staff and the room would feel a lot different than it does now. Even though I like the staff a lot, I think that would take it to the next level. And I think those are names that you should watch for in the future that could be part of Ohio State's plans, because they're great Buckeyes, getting some great experience at other places, and love to see them back with the family.
And Kenny Guyton is the wide receiver coach for Arkansas right now. So he's SEC West, big time job working for Sam Pittman, one of my favorite coaches because he's an O-line guy. But it's amazing how Ohio State, there's always this talk that they dominated the broadcasting side with Herb Street, Joey Galloway, this wave of Ohio State guys. Spielman did it for a while. But now you look into the young coaching ranks, and you've got, I think James is going to be a superstar, Brian Hartline, Kenny Guyton, JT. You got some guys that are going to make headway. Guys that are, I think, can all be head coaches one day. And I'm excited for all of them. I love those guys. I was fortunate enough to see JT Barrett at the Notre Dame game because it was kind of a weird week because the NFL was off that week. It was kind of like the week of cuts. The guys get cut, so the whole NFL was off that week. So it was kind of neat for Ohio State because Chase Young was there and Ezekiel and Eli Apple, like all these guys that I know, and I love seeing Ezekiel, Marshawn Lattimore, like kids I knew from recruiting, and these guys I was just so happy to see and shoot the bull with. But I love seeing JT. I saw him. I told him, I was like, dude, I love you and support you more than anybody, right? And he's like, oh, I know. He's like, I see all the stuff you do, and I was like, and I don't do that because I need adulation from JT, but I genuinely feel bad because that's a kid that he gave it up every week, man. He played hurt, tough as nails, was the unquestioned leader of that 14 team. Which is it's always hilarious because people are like, well, we wouldn't have beaten Alabama with JT. And I'm like, well, Cardell beat Alabama and Cardell beat Oregon, which is great. Beat Wisconsin, which is great. But, JT beat Cardell twice, and I love Cardell. And again, I'm not poo-pooing Cardell at all because I talk to Cardell a lot. I love Cardell. So it's like, but, JT beat him out twice. So, I mean, let's just be serious. JT, 2 times was determined to be a better quarterback than Cardell. And Cardell's older than him. So, you went with the younger guy who was just better. So I think JT wins that national championship. And again, just a great kid. But, it is what it is. Now, this is an interesting question. I think I know where this is going to go with you, Nevada. I think that we know the ceiling of Trey Henderson. If Trey Henderson doesn't play to his talent, is it time to move on? Maybe give the other backs a feature. I'll start this one off. I think Trey Henderson's ceiling is so much higher than any other back in that room that it's ridiculous. I think he could be a Saquon Barkley type. I said that coming into his freshman year. And I'll never forget, I said, watch this guy. He's unbelievable. I've been told he's unbelievable. People in practice say he's unbelievable. He breaks 75-yard runs all the time in practice, like real runs, like makes guys miss, runs guys over. And then the first game, he gets 3 touches. One of which went for like 75 yards and a touchdown. But still, it was just like, he doesn't get the carries. But if they make him into, not a full workhorse, but just kind of a guy that gets 40% of the carries, then he can have 1,500 yards and he'll be off to the NFL and he'll be a first-round pick. I think he'll have like a Bijan Robinson kind of year. But what say you, Nevada, about Trey Henderson and his talent level?
Well, it was interesting that there was somebody on our board today that posted, hey, our running back room's fine. We don't really have a dude in the running back room, but it's a good running back room. And I'm thinking, we don't have a dude. I mean, we have a guy. Like I'm pretty sure Trey was like a preseason first-team All-American on some things, and mine's going to play in the NFL for 12 years for somebody. So we got dudes. Yeah, Trey's just got just ridiculous talent. Just battled plantar this year. If anybody's ever had plantar, I've had it and had what I would say was like a medium case of plantar, and it was hard to walk. I mean, it was just hard to walk up the stairs, let alone be a running back and try to use it to cut and pivot and accelerate. I cannot imagine how painful it was for him this year. And, I think that the offseason, the surgery, and the rehab's going to do him a world of good. And I think we'll chuckle at some of these conversations going there. But no, Trey's the guy. I mean, Trey is Saquon Barkley. And I think we'll all see that. We'll all see that on display. But look, we've got a lot of running backs next year. We got a lot of guys that can carry the ball, and I'm comfortable with just about any of them doing it. So I feel real good about that.
This is a great question, Scott. Is anybody going to the spring game? If you're going to the spring game, tap into the chat if you want to. Say you are going, you're not going. Maybe say why you are or aren't going. Because I think that the spring game, the product has gone down dramatically since Urban took over, and with Ryan, it's almost unwatchable. And again, I get it. You want guys to be healthy. You don't want to see a Mitchell Melton situation where a guy tears his ACL in a spring game, which is terrible. But I think it's also healthy to get some tackling in, and and give the people a little bit of a show. I think it's gotten to the point where it's basically I don't even know why you put pads on. 'Cause it's like two-hand touch. But back in the olden days of 04, 05, like we played 4 quarters, and I think that the last quarter or maybe the last 2 quarters was a running clock, but it might not have been because I felt like the games used to just be like eternally long. I remember I'd usually play the first drive or two, and it just like took forever. And a lot of times it was during the NFL draft, like in '04, like when Will Smith got drafted in like the 20s in the first round by the Saints. I remember like the crowd reaction and the cheering and stuff because they didn't have like a big jumbotron. They just had like a little side scroll thing on the little board on the side of the thing, and they had like a kind of a rolling ticker of who was getting picked in the draft. So technology's come a long, long way. But I'd be interested to see how many people go to the spring game. What do they think of the spring game? Do they watch the spring game? Nevada, what do you think of the spring game now? Like, what do you get out of it? Do you get anything out of it? Is it just complete fodder? Is it just, hey, it's cool to see the guys run around in their jerseys? What do you get out of the spring game in modern day, Ohio State football 2023?
Well, I think, yeah, I get excited just to watch them run around in the jerseys and doing the thing. This year, I think we've got, there's a couple of big storylines that we'll see. The main one's the quarterbacks. We're going to get a chance to see the quarterbacks play, and we'll get an idea of where they're at in terms of how they're delivering the ball. Are they delivering the ball on time? Are they delivering with velocity? How are they throwing? How accurate are they? And I think that's something. But the second thing, and the really big thing, is watching who Ohio State is featuring because they're concerned about losing them in the transfer portal. I think that's always a fun thing to do in the modern spring game is see who are they throwing it to, who are they giving plays to, who are they kind of giving to, because I think a lot of times you can tell, like last year with Evan Pryor when they were feeding him, you could tell it was like, oh, Evan, we got big plans for you. You're going to be a big part of our thing. And I like to see those little stories kind of coming out in the spring game because that tells me a lot about who Ohio State covets, who Ohio State doesn't want to lose. And that's something that you wouldn't have seen back in the old days, but that's something you certainly will get in 2023.
Yeah, like G. Scott's the guy that he got more targets in last year's spring game than he has the rest of his career combined. Like, I mean, they were throwing it to him constantly. And again, that's why it's always kind of interesting and kind of funny after spring games when people say, oh, this guy will be the new secret weapon for Ohio State, or this guy will be the new X factor. And, it's like G. Scott and Evan Pryor and that kind of thing. Because again, I know, I know what guys are looking at transferring. I mean, these kids talk. So, when you say, hey, this guy's, doing whatever, and you wouldn't be surprised if he's not here. Like, and the coaches hear it too. They know, and the players talk to the coaches. And so all of a sudden, when you see a guy just getting fed and featured and a lot of carries or a lot of easy completions, and again, it's not speculating, but, if you're some of these guys going into year 2, year 3, and you don't really have a role and you don't really see a path to playing this year, like, of course the coaches are going to worry about you because, that's part of modern day college football. Like, these kids take off and that's just part of the gig now. So, well, Nevada, we got to wrap this thing. We appreciate you guys. Any closing thoughts, Nevada? Fantastic night with you guys. Thank you guys so much. Any thoughts, Nevada?
Yeah, just stay tuned for Transfer Portal Watch. We are definitely on Panda Watch right now. We're going to be giving it to you up in a minute. So be watching Twitter, be logged onto the boards because this could break. It could break at any time, and it could be very, very good news for Ohio State. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I agree. And this is, I know I plug BuckeyeScoop.com, but guys, like, if there is ever a time to be on BuckeyeScoop.com, it is right now because we've got Davison, Igbinosun Watch, we call it Panda Watch, is on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, it's always fun to kind of get these little tidbits and what's going on in the Woody, what players are happy, what players aren't happy, blah, 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 blah. But I love being on BuckeyeScoop.com. If you guys are fans of Ohio State basketball, Ohio State football, obviously is the heavyweight gorilla for us. But we follow basketball. We do game threads for when the NFL is going on. So I think if you guys love a great community with great people, really high-end, classy people, that's the spot, because it is only that. There's no riffraff. There's no infighting. You know, it's a very clean board. A lot of great opinions. And again, I don't need people to agree with me. I actually encourage people to not agree with me. If I say that JT Barrett is the greatest quarterback of all time, which I obviously don't believe that, but if I say something like that and you want to come in and say Justin Fields, and somebody else wants to say CJ Stroud, and somebody else wants to say Troy Smith, then I love that. Like, I love a good, healthy room, good, healthy debate, good points and counterpoints. That is what we strive for at BuckeyeScoop.com. We love that kind of stuff. So we appreciate you guys as always. Thank you guys for bringing awesome questions tonight. As always, you guys are the best in the business. We are going to go live about 7 o'clock every night. So set your watches. If you enjoyed this content, please leave us a like, comment. Who's going to be the starting quarterback? I want to hear from you guys. Is it going to be Kyle McCord? Is it going to be Devin Brown? Or a challenger to be named later if someone comes in the portal after spring, which would be really crazy. I doubt it will happen, but hey, modern day college football, anything can happen. So again, we appreciate you guys so much. Leave us a like, subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a 5-star review. That is huge for us. Big help for us always, help people find the podcast. So thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Go Bucks. Let's go get Davison, Igbinosun. Good night, y'all.